Hello, here we're going to have a look at Eudoxa strings. Eudoxa strings have been around since the 1950s, and for many years they were the first choice of really good players, professionals, advanced students, and anyone who wanted to get the absolute best sound out of their instruments. Nowadays they're a little bit less popular because with the introduction of synthetic core strings in the early 1970s, the drawbacks of Eudoxa strings and this type of string with a gut core really became more evident, and they're less popular than perhaps they used to be. Although if you're looking for the ultimate in quality and warmth, depth of sound, then they still really do take a bit of beating. But if you're going to use them, you do need to take on board just one or two issues around them. They're not, of course, the cheapest strings, and they are quite fragile, so the coverings can in fact come when the strings get a bit old. The coverings themselves can loosen, and then it's quite clear that the strings are worn out. So as I say, they're a great sound, terrific string, but they're a little bit high maintenance. So let's just discuss that in a little bit more detail. The core, the gut core, has a lot more stretch in it than a synthetic strings, and they're more susceptible to changes in humidity and temperature. So if you use these strings, you will find that you have to tune your instrument on a regular basis, much more so than you would with a synthetic core string and certainly a metal core string. It's important, if you do go for these strings, that you do know exactly what you're buying. They're slightly different in their presentation, in particular with the end of the string. We talk about ball end or loop end quite a lot with violin strings, but that, on the whole, that really only refers to the E string, where you can have an option of a loop end or a ball end depending upon the type of fine tuner. These strings, gut chord strings, they don't have either a loop or a ball. They have a knot at the end, and if I just hold this one up, you can probably see the end of the string. Now you can see there is a loop there, but that's not a loop in the sense of ball end or loop end. That loop is really a consequence of the way the manufacturer ties off the string in order to produce the knot at the end. Now the reason for this is because these strings are not designed to be put into fine tuners, so they don't have a ball. They have a knot which is there to go into a traditional wooden tailpiece, which I'm sure you'll be familiar with. It's a keyhole slot, and the string goes into that slot. It doesn't need a fine tuner, and the reason for that is that fine tuners have a limited range of adjustment on them, and because the gut core strings stretch so much, if you were to put this type of string into a fine tuner, you would find, because of the regular tuning needed, that you would use up the travel on a fine tuner very quickly, and you'd have to wind the tuner down to get a change in pitch. And in a very short period of time, you'd find that you'd used up the entire range of the travel on the adjuster. So these strings should be tuned simply on the pegs, and for that reason you do need good, well-fitting pegs that don't stick or aren't loose. Otherwise it can be really frustrating trying to accurately tune these strings. So anyway, so that's pretty much it. The coverings, they're all of course metal covered, so there's no option with the Eudoxa. The A is covered in aluminium, the D also aluminium, and the G is silver, the traditional windings for these strings. So there they are, Pirastro Eudoxa. A great string, but do be sure that you know what you're buying with these strings, because they do, as I say, they do require just a little bit more input in use, but the quality of sound can certainly compensate. So thanks for looking. Any questions, do get in touch.